Hello YouTube and welcome to One Canadian's Perspective. Thanks for joining me today. I wanted to rant very briefly about how the Liberals have handled trade negotiations with Trump and the Americans. But before I do that, I want to talk about the past election that we had earlier this year. In that election, Mark Carney and the Liberals ran on a maximalist position of elbows up, taking a hard line on Trump and the Americans, talking about how we're going to have dollar for dollar tariffs and so forth. Now, if you want to argue about, if you want to argue about the effectiveness of counter tariffs, I'm there with you, right? Or whether it actually hurts your people more to have this type of position, I totally agree. Okay, but that's not what the Liberals at work have ran on, and it really drives me nuts. And I mean, hypocrisy really drives me nuts, okay? And I know that people who are partisans, people who are either in the liberal camp or on the conservative camp or whatever, okay, that whatever their party does is okay. As someone who's not in one of those camps, it drives me absolutely nuts that our politicians are saying one thing and doing the complete opposite. All right. How are we to know what they actually stand for when politicians continue to just, campaign on something and then do the opposite? So anyways, Prime Minister Carney and the Liberals have unilaterally surrendered to Donald Trump and the Americans. And when I say that, they've got rid of the digital services tax, which I agree is a stupid tax to begin with. OK, but that's not their position. They've also undone all of the counter tariffs that were put in place, right? And they've done this unilaterally, right? We've gotten nothing out of our trade negotiations and so forth. And for God's sake, stop telling us we're going to get a deal. You know, I think it was after the election. We're going to get a deal 30 days after the election. Then that was pushed to the July 15th. And then that was pushed to August 1st. And now I read on Bloomberg yesterday that Prime Minister Carney said, we may have a trade deal with the Americans by the end of next week. For God's sake, stop setting expectations, okay, and just get the trade deal done when it gets done. All right? I mean, luckily for the Liberals, the Conservatives are just as incompetent. All right? Instead of focusing on pocketbook issues that are hitting everyday Canadians, Pierre Poilievre goes on a podcast and tries to relitigate previous issues with a different leader. Okay, yeah, Justin Trudeau's fucking sucked. All right, and what he did with Aga Khan and SNC-Lavalin was wrong. Okay, and the ethics commissioners said it was wrong, but the Canadians have had election after election after election, and they voted for the Liberals anyways. Okay, so no one cares, or should I say, not no one. Most people do not care about that. All right, focus on your winners, the pocketbook issues. Okay, the cost of living. That's what's going to win you the election. Okay, not what happened with Jody Wilson-Raybould or SNC-Lavalin or blackface. No one cares about that stuff. Okay, stop focusing on that. And I think that a lot of the problems with Canadian politics and politics in general around the world is that our goddamn politicians are so detached from reality, from the day-to-day problems that Canadians have. Or, sorry, not just Canadians, right? But, if you're talking about American politicians or European politicians, right? They're so detached from the everyday people, right? Look at the makeup of our politicians. The business owner here, the lawyer, corporate executive, right? And I mean, our Prime Minister Carney is from the corporate world. Now, I'm not saying that he's not a smart guy. He's definitely very smart. If you look at his background, okay, he has the education and he has the experience in economics. But him and his cabinet and Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre and all of the goddamn politicians that we have are so detached from the realities of day-to-day Canadians, right? When does Pierre Poilievre or Mark Carney know the cost of beef, right? Does he know the cost of vegetables or whatnot? Of course not. They all have publicly funded staff to buy all this stuff for them, keep them fed, to take care of all of these little things that you and I have to worry about every day, right? So they don't care about this, and that's why they can talk about stupid things like SNC Lavalin, which happened in 2019, or I think we litigated that in the 2019 election. As you can tell, I'm very annoyed at this because I really don't think that we have politicians that give a shit about the average Canadian. They pay lip service. Oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and what do they do? Life costs more, and life keeps costing more. Okay, people's wages are not increasing with the rate of inflation, and the future just looks worse and worse. I mean, look, if you talk to Canadians of all stripes, whether they're liberal or conservative or NDP or whatever, okay? Again, I've complained about this in a previous video. We generally want the same things. We want to make more money. We want to be more comfortable. We want our kids to have a brighter future, okay? But if we look at where we're going now, the kids are the next generation. I worry about my son's generation, okay? And while he is fortunate that my wife and I are doing better than the average Canadian, we're still not, we're not rich by any means, okay? But I look at him and I'm like, oh my God, the future is going to be much scarier, okay? And the economic opportunities for him when he's older, man, it's going to be much tougher. And I don't see any politician talking about talking about that. They're more interested in partisan attacks, hitting each other over the stupidest things, and it just absolutely drives me nuts. None of these I would say honestly, okay, that if you have an incumbent politician, especially if you have an incumbent politician that's been there for 3, 4, 5 terms, right? They've been there for 10 years, 20 years, whatever, right? Vote them out. They do not deserve to run, okay? Especially after the last 10 years of liberal rule, which has been absolutely, we've had zero economic growth in the last 10 years, okay? That is completely the fault of the liberals, all right? But not just, that's completely the fault of the liberals and any of the incumbent politicians that we have. If they're still there, vote them out. They do not deserve to be in power any longer, okay? And we really need, I'm hitting Trudeau and the liberals here, right? Trudeau ran on, electoral reform. We do need electoral reform. The parliamentary first past the post system that we have is absolutely terrible, yes, okay? But more than electoral reform, we just need major reform out of our electoral system altogether, okay? We need a system in place that allows the average person to run. Sorry, just gonna make a turn here real quick. Yeah, we need a system that allows teachers, mom and pop shop operators, right? Janitors, blue collar workers to be able to run and make a difference in people's lives. Maybe if our parliament were made up of average Canadians, that shit would actually happen for average Canadians instead of instead of looking after corporate interests, trying to pick the winners and losers, okay, of in industry. Man, why don't we just try to make average Canadians' lives better? But no, we can't have that because all we have are rich people running, and they don't give a shit about inflation. But inflation, they don't give a shit about that. Over the last 5 years, or all the foreign workers coming in and taking all the low-end jobs, they don't care. They don't make they have lots of money anyways. As you can tell, this is something that bothers me quite a bit, and I am very worried about the future and what it means for younger Canadians. Anyways, thank you for joining me today, and yeah, let's see what I think. Sorry, before I end the rant, it's been about 6-7 months since the last election. So it's like 6 or 7 months since Mark Carney has become prime minister. All right, you can't, government does not move quickly, okay? And I think that Prime Minister Carney still has a bit of goodwill that Canadians are willing to give him, okay? But that is ending very quickly, okay? And he better pull a rabbit out of his hat, because that's what Canadians elected him for, okay? That's why Canadians gave the Liberals another chance, all right? And there's been a lot of talk, and no action, okay? And if you want to say, Colin, it's how can you expect someone to negotiate in good faith with Donald Trump? Yeah, that's fair, but that's what they ran on, okay? And that's what I'm going to hold them accountable for, all right? But sometimes I wish. Sometimes I wish we had like a rock for the government, because that way at least I know a rock won't make shit worse. Enough for today. Thank you for joining me, and we'll catch you on the next one.